Hello, I'm David Schofield of Purpose and Action Coaching. So this is part two of my Lucifer and Ahriman videos because the first one was popular. Comments and likes. A lot of people like the content there. So to elaborate, to bring more for you guys, to summarize what I put last time. So Rudolf Steiner was, I said Swiss, actually. It turns out he was Croatian. He lived in the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, but it was in Croatia, the land now called Croatia, that he was born in. He was a doctor, a scientist, an esotericist. He was involved with the Theosophical Society for a long time. He broke away from that and created anthroposophy, his own spiritual science, as he called it, which he applied to many domains in the world, to education, to agriculture, to mental health, to blah, 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 blah. Lots of ways that he took spiritual principles, things that he had learnt from a lot of deep inner work, and applied them to improving the world. So you can't say this guy was sitting on a meditation cushion, hiding from the world, not doing anything of real use, philosophizing endlessly. The guy got stuck in and did stuff. So kudos to him. He stated, one of the many things he stated, were that there are two opposing forces in our lives. And you can call these devils. On the one side, we have the force of materialism. On the other side, the force of spiritualism. On the side of materialism, the devil is known as Ahriman. And on the side of spiritualism, the force is known as Lucifer. And we're more familiar with that one in the West. So Ahriman, materialism, that's all about drilling down into material reality, taking things apart and trying to specify everything to make everything known as much as possible. Whereas on the other side, spiritualism is the opposite. It's pushing into the unknown, letting go of knowing things. It's far more dispersed. It's where ideas are. So the role of these two demons, ideally devils, ideally is to help us to grow, or at least that's how we can frame it. But if they win, the materialist worldview, as championed by Ahriman, would have us encased in matter, or as Steiner puts it, our souls being encased in matter. He wants us to be totally locked into the earth with no connection to spirit at all. And on the other side, Lucifer wants our souls to be taken off the earth into delusion, into fantasy, away entirely. And then Lucifer has control of our souls. The best metaphor I found for when these two work together, and we are seeing this starting to unfold now, is the Matrix. The Matrix, I think, was a prophecy in a way. It was a warning of how things can go, these two tendencies working together. We need to find a balance. And the way that balance point is achieved, again, wrapping up from my previous video, you can watch that on my channel, is we must bring a luciferic impulse into the material, into the Ahrimanic. So where we have genuine interest and inspiration, ideas that we are motivated by, we bring them into things in the material world, material sciences, mathematics, whatever it is that you're interested in the material world, to further that for the sake of humanity, to further that field. Whereas the opposite of that would be just to pursue a purely material outcome. So the example used by Steiner a lot is academics who write endless papers just because they want to be published and they want to be known. These papers sit on shelves gathering dust. Nobody really pays attention to them. It's a waste of life. It's a waste of life force, waste of energy. So we need to bring that genuine inspiration and insight and motivation into the material world to further that domain of human activity. And at the same time, we need to bring a material rationalism, critically analyzing, criticizing our ideas, because our ideas can be too ungrounded, too unrealistic, just false. So we need to check them, our ideas, for the cause and effect. How would this go if I actually tried to do it? What would happen? And we often find that we lack all sorts of information and understanding. And so we have to go around and learn an awful lot more in order to make that thing actually practical and then applicable. So how do these two forces play out in the world at the moment? Well, in many ways, many ways, but I would see the spiritualist worldview. I've spent a little bit of time in spiritualist church, and I know a lot of people who spend all their time in meditation, hiding from the world, totally removed, not having any practical application at all, just totally absorbed in their own inner life. Now, I think probably there's a place for a small, very, very, very small minority of people. If you're one of those people, you're saying, well, I'm one of those, just criticize that a little bit, because you might not be. you might just be indulging yourself, and that's indulging your fantasies, your delusions. And so you're doing a deal with the devil, Lucifer specifically, in Steiner's view. Whereas, well, before I move on, I think we can see this pull toward delusion with augmented realities, virtual realities, with the metaverse, with people's attachment to social media, with people going off to Peru and taking loads of psychedelics, taking them off into fantasy worlds and not physically real materialist worlds. If we take ourselves off the planet, then we are doing a deal with the devil. I've started to become, and these are feelings I had about psychedelics before. I started to see that world as very dark and detached from reality, not very helpful at all. I know there's a lot of people, particularly nowadays, advocating for it. I just don't agree. And more I'm seeing it as a problem, really. On the other side, excessive materialism. Well, we've experienced that for a very long time already. The reductive, mechanistic approach that science takes, for example, or modern science takes. It's not science exactly. It's a form of science, I would say, that wants to pick everything apart and search for the deeper truth, or the more fundamental truth in the material sense. So with that, there is no space for the unknown. There's no space for all of the many subtle and immeasurable qualitative things that are part of reality. Now, I'm not a scientist. I know scientists, and they tell me this as well. So I'm not going to speak with authority on science, but that's my sense, that we've got ourselves into the problems we have with the climate, for example. Although there's an awful lot of nonsense narrative around climate change, we are damaging the ecosystem to some degree or another. There is massive species loss. Steiner wouldn't necessarily agree that's because of our activity. It could just well be because the Earth is in a decline, and that's a natural part of the organism's life process. But trying to make everything known in a reality where we cannot do that is ridiculous. However, to me, it's ridiculous. However, like I said, if we are to attempt to make things more known through a genuine inspiration and interest, to create that, to make that domain of human activity more valuable to humanity, so humanity can evolve, to create a higher platform for our spiritual evolution and growth, then that makes sense to me. But just to pursue the pursuit of knowledge to put in books just for the sake of it is devoid of any meaning, really. So if we continue down this path, we find ourselves in the matrix. Perhaps we find ourselves as global digital citizens, first of all, and there's an awful lot to be said about that. And Christianity speaks an awful lot about the mark of the beast, the mark put on our head or our hands, our forehead or our hands, that stop us from participating in the economy, controlling our ability to generate our own resources. There's an awful lot of that perhaps happening right now with various medical interventions and government interventions. So, mentioning Christianity, the balance point then, bringing the impulses of Ahriman and Lucifer into one another to find that balance point, that is living with the Christ. That is being able to fight off, if you like, to hold back those two oppressive demonic forces, those devils, and to remain centered. That is being with Christ, as far as I understand it with Steiner so far. So that is level 2, perhaps, of 1,000 levels of this particular topic, and there's many other topics. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear if there's any other areas that you would like me to cover. I'm delving deep into Steiner at the moment, not just anthroposophy in general, but specifically education, because I have a young child and I'm a stepfather to 10-year-old twins as well. So I really want them to have the best education possible. And this seems to be a huge way to provide that education. So any parents out there that are listening as well, I'd love to hear your thoughts, anything you would like me to cover around there. Storytelling is really massive. That's another really important thing. So let me hear you. Thank you for listening.